Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you gotta do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the second ever live stream. You see that face on air? You see Eric's face right there, guys? That is the look of being impressed, because I was working on that for a while earlier today, putting a lot of time into Canva. I mean, I'm paying for Canva Pro, so I might as well use it. But guys, welcome to, don't worry about it. Welcome to the Justice League Snyder Cut review, discussion, whatever have you. I don't know why it seems to be exclusively DC movies that are being done here on our YouTube channel, but that's just kind of how it worked out. So Eric, it's good to see you, and I'm excited to talk about this film. We did very minimal amount of talking about how we felt about the movie, so I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, and while I don't want this to become a DC only movie review channel, I'm glad that it's no longer a Wonder Woman 84 only reviewed channel.
Eric's favorite movie.
That is a win. This is going to be a completely different video as well. So I'm really excited to get into it. The Snyder Cut is here, and obviously everyone is talking about it. So if you're joining us live or you're watching it afterwards, thanks for making us one of the people you're listening to, because I was just scrolling on YouTube, just checking out reviews endlessly, and man, it's a lot.
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of opinions out there. A lot of people have checked it out. They have sat down and spent the 4 hours that it takes to watch this film. And we'll get into all of that as far as like the runtime and everything. For those of you that are watching, thank you so much for joining us. You can utilize that comment feature over on YouTube and send us questions, and we'll periodically answer those throughout the episode. So Eric, for those of them that have never gotten a chance to listen to one of our movie reviews over on the podcast, let them know how this is going to break down.
So we're going to get into it really simple, dive into it. We're going to dive into likes and dislikes. Then we're going to go into our overall thoughts on the actual film, give our grades, and then we're going to switch over to a full spoiler discussion. So we're hoping to hit two different audiences here. So especially if you're watching live, please make sure you're paying attention for when we give that spoiler warning, because when we get there, we got a lot to dive into. This was a very long movie with a lot of new material. Just to kind of get ahead of myself, a completely different movie than what we saw before.
Yeah, that is honestly putting it simply. And unlike one of our podcast episodes, there's not going to be an affiliate plug or an ad right in the middle. So we were going to tell you, hey, if you don't want to stick around for any of the spoiler discussion, it is time to go. But Eric, let's get into it here. Zack Snyder's Justice League, of course, is a vision that has been fulfilled now over just a multi-year saga. Of course, you know, it all started with the terrible tragedy of him losing his daughter. And, you know, I honestly am very happy that he got to fulfill this vision, whether or not, however we felt about the movie, whether it was good or bad or somewhere in the middle. I am glad that he at least got to this point and was given the ability to tell his story, because he deserved it.
Yeah, I agree full-heartedly. Like it's crazy, because with this movie, it's honestly a good thing for Zack Snyder. I'm not sure how good of a thing this is for DC. The amount of stuff, and when we get to spoilers, you guys will, you know, obviously hear it. If you've seen the movie, you already know. But the amount of stuff that they took out of the movie, assuming a lot of it was already there on the table to be cut, it's a really bad reflection, especially for one character in particular that I know we're probably going to highlight in the spoiler-free section. It's really crazy. And I don't know where this puts DC right now. Everything's in limbo. So while I'm happy I saw this movie, and we're going to talk about how we felt about it, how it actually impacts DC as a whole, I don't know that that's going to be a positive.
Yeah, that is a good point, because this was meant to be the middle film in a series of, I believe, 5 parts. So the first 2 were Superman, the Man of Steel film. The second one was Batman v Superman. And this was the middle film with 2 more Justice League movies to be shot. And we'll get into, I think, Eric, maybe before we go into spoiler territory, we should go into, do you think they'll give him the reins and maybe get a chance to finish this story? But yeah, it is, again, it's going to have ramifications on the DCEU. At least we think. We're not really sure how they're going to proceed from here, but let's get into the things that we liked about the film. Again, it is a 4-hour runtime. Let's get into the first question here that we actually have been asked here by Vanessa. So she says 4 hours is a long time. Yes, it absolutely is. Would you say it's easy to break the movie up, or should we just watch it in one sitting? So this is kind of an interesting question. I think it really just kind of depends on how invested you are in this type of story. You know, of course, a lot of people love comic book movies, but some people are just kind of casual fans. And if you are a casual fan, it is going to be difficult to sit through all 4 hours of this, because there are moments that and we'll get into this, that maybe we didn't necessarily need. Would you agree on that, Eric?
Yeah, I would. And I mean, we're going to talk about dislikes in a moment, so I could probably harp on that a little bit more. But what I would say to answer that question is the movie is long. 4 hours is a very long time. It's pretty obvious. If you're not used to watching a movie that's at least 3 hours and being able to watch it all the way through, that pretty much answers your question. For me, I wanted to sit in one sitting and I wanted to watch it and I wanted to enjoy it in full. But I got to admit, I mean, I got up at a few points, especially once those parts came through. But I would say that the first 3 parts moved much slower than the last 3 parts. And a positive was that those last 3 parts and the epilogue, those were a breeze for me. I mean, they went by so fast once things start to pick up, and it felt like a kind of a different movie, which is why I could understand people maybe assume that Zack Snyder's original Justice League was rumored to be 2 parts, because it is really long if this was his original vision.
And it easily could have been broken up into 2 parts as well. I think you kind of course, have seen that done quite a bit with the Hunger Games, Harry Potter, of course, Infinity War and Endgame. They could have easily done that. It is just incredibly head scratching. And I don't want to get too far ahead here, Eric, like the amount of things that were cut out. And we'll probably talk about Joss Whedon when it comes to the spoiler part of this episode. I would say if you think it would be difficult to get through it, break it up into 2 sittings. I think that would definitely be a good way to do it. Watch half of it one night, come back and watch the second half the next night. I will say though, like Eric mentioned, once it does start to ramp up, it is very interesting. There's a lot of story, of course, to be told here. Each and every character gets their right amount, I think, of shine and polish. And that was one thing, of course, that was sorely missing in the first time around when this film came up. So I think it could easily be done in 2 sittings for sure.
Yeah, and when we're talking about positives, I mean, all that stuff that was on the cutting room floor is brought to life, and then some, because they did reshoot some scenes, and there's pros and cons to that. But for the stuff that you could clearly tell they just didn't include in the Justice League movie, I mean, man, almost all of that was just really, really good, especially those action sequences where
Aquin.
I'm used to the podcast where we could edit that out, but now it's on YouTube forever for the millions of viewers that are watching right now at home. So yeah, I honestly think like there's a Wonder Woman scene in particular that I don't remember being that long. That was so much better for it. And it was like little things like that, little action sequences that just were better enhanced for just a couple more moments with those characters and what they were doing. But again, that was really a standout for me. They really fleshed out a lot of the characters, not only in the action scenes, but really just the characters themselves.
And another character I think that definitely benefited from this was Steppenwolf. Of course, he got a complete redesign. You get to, again, learn more about his character and his backstory and his reasoning for, why he is doing what he is doing here on Earth. Of course, the version that we got in the Joss Whedon, the theatrical version, was just this, stripped down, kind of almost nameless character who didn't really, I know I didn't feel like he was any kind of threat at any point, whereas opposed to this one, he definitely felt like that. And then we also learned that, he's kind of somebody has a bit of a redemption story of his own.
Yeah, and unlike Thanos, who was kind of in the background, I mean, Darkseid is like present. If you haven't told by the trailers, that's not very much of a spoiler. But, the first film, Steppenwolf was like, mother, I'm here for my mother in the boxes.
God, so bad.
Really awful. And he looked awful too. This movie's a complete turnaround. He is a one-note villain in the sense of just serving a purpose, but he's a good one-note villain. Very similar to, again, I bring him up all the time, is Ronan from Guardians of the Galaxy. I love that character because he was very singular, very singular in what he wanted to do and what he was there to do. He was never there to win. He was there to lose, but he was there for a purpose and a reason to the bigger story. And I think that's what Steppenwolf offered here.
Absolutely. Let's get to our buddy James. Actually, is checking us out here. Well, let's see what he has to say. First, he said he's here to collect his money. Checks in the mail, Jay. Yeah, definitely. It's certainly on his way. But here's his actual question. He says he struggled with watching DC films. Will this one make him more disappointed than the original? I assume is what he meant in their work as a fan of the comics. So I think, at least from what I have seen from people that are fans of the source material, people have been pretty happy with this. So, of course, these are characters. One of the things that's been so disappointing about the DC films, of course, is that it has some of the best characters, not, of course, just in DC, but really in comic books in general. And these are characters, look at all the Batman films and how successful they were. We have been clamoring for a modern day team up and of this proportion for a long time, and they just haven't been able to nail down those stories. So I think if you are a fan of the source material, at least from what I have seen, people are receiving this very, very well.
Yeah, I think for me, and I watched Batman versus Superman, the Ultimate Edition. That was actually somebody on Twitter that challenged us to do that before we do another tirades episode, because we did the MCU. So I watched it. Man of Steel, I enjoyed. I've actually watched that more than once. Batman versus Superman, I was not a big fan of. And then the original Justice League, as it's going to be called now, was not very good at all. And this movie was fantastic. It's one of my favorite DC movies that have come out. But I would say that it does have to follow Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman in watching it. Just like how Phil mentioned, that was kind of the original vision. So this isn't like Wonder Woman, where we could say the first one is fantastic to watch separate from all the other movies. This movie is really good, but it is predicated on you actually watching and at least understanding Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman. So that's kind of where I would throw that. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but if you've at least watched those two films, I think you're going to walk out enjoying this one.
Well, let me ask you this, because you were the one that bit the bullet on that and watched the extended cut of Batman versus Superman. Did you find that it enhanced your watching of this?
In a way it did, but not very much. It was just a longer movie than what I had originally gotten. That was the director's cut, where the Snyder Cut is obviously his version of the movie that was never released and that was cut up into pieces. That wasn't really his. So in that sense, I mean, it enhanced it because I thought there was more of a journey, and that you're going to hear that a lot in my thoughts about this particular film. But Batman versus Superman being longer did help it be a better film, but not by very much. I mean, that movie still has many problems. It had too many things it was trying to juggle at once. And there just were a lot of problems in general that, without making this a Batman versus Superman specific episode or review that I'm not going to get into.
We don't have time.
Yeah, but we can absolutely discuss on a future episode on the podcast. But I would tell you guys that it definitely is a journey. And that getting a little bit more time helped that journey out for sure.
Yeah, I don't know that I can say that I will ever go and watch the extended version of Batman vs. Superman, but I do know it was held in pretty high regard. Let's get to another question here, Eric, that is coming in. This is from Philin. She says she is very jaded by the DC movies that have come out thus far, so she skipped the theatrical version of the Justice League. Should I watch the theatrical version before watching the Snyder Cut? And this is kind of an interesting question. Now, first off, you're dedicating like 6.5 hours, almost 7 hours of your life to watching this essentially, quote unquote, the same film. So, of course, that is going to be very difficult. I would say watch the theatrical version to gain an appreciation of the Snyder Cut. Pretty much what I have seen from DC is that no one is acknowledging the Justice League anymore. It is no longer canon. It does not exist. And the Snyder Cut is above all the version that will now exist going forward in this universe. So I would say if you feel like you can commit that amount of time, then absolutely watch the theatrical version first, so you can maybe try and get an understanding of why the changes were made and why we needed the Snyder Cut, because I think that's very important.
It's important, but I don't think it's necessary. I think this movie has a lot to offer. It is already a big ask. It really is. This is coming from someone who had watched 7 hours of Batman versus Superman being 3, and then the Justice League being 4. it's a really big task. If
It's
anything,
crazy that Eric made it here, honestly.
I don't
It's
know how I'm
impressive.
still awake, honestly, between that and then beating Titanfall for the Game Room episode that comes out on Monday. I don't know what was going on, but as far as the theatrical version, I mean, you could, if you want to see the differences, I would probably say watch it afterwards. So that way it doesn't I don't know, that way it doesn't ruin some of the moments. Cause I would have loved to be a person who came in and watched this Justice League without having seen the theatrical version. So I'm a little jealous that you might have that opportunity. I wouldn't throw it away. And honestly, the theatrical version is skippable. It's completely skippable. You're wasting 2 hours, no matter how you do it, before, after. It's a waste of time, honestly.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't actually think about that. If you can experience this one first, then yeah, definitely do that. But if you find yourself having the time, then it is worth watching. At what a travesty. I don't know what Joss Whedon was doing. I don't know, and of course with everything coming out about him and working with him, you have to wonder if that played into it. But this is a completely different film as far as the tone, as far as the quality. There are some moments where, of course, the CGI isn't great, but I mean, they did what they could in the middle of a pandemic, and they actually had reshoots for this thing, which actually leads to the next question here. Eric, actually coming from Stephanie. How do you feel about Jared Leto reprising his role as Joker, especially since he sported a different look compared to Suicide Squad? Now, we're going to get into Joker talk heavily, I think, when it comes to the spoiler section. We don't want to the part of the film that this comes in, we don't want to spoil what he's doing there or what he is a part of. So I will just say this, Eric, I'll start by this. If I said to you last night, I hope that this doesn't become like a thing now, like release the blank cut, but there are rumors, of course, and rumblings out there that there is a alternate version of the Suicide Squad that is apparently much better, similar to the Snyder Cut. And if that is what we would get at a
Phil's dying.
That is what we would get. That's what we're gonna get out of Jared Leto. I want to see it. You and I think, well, me more so than you, have been incredibly vocal and speaking out against that version of the Joker. It was not even really acknowledged, to be honest with you. But in his brief amount of screen time, it had me going, holy shit, I want more of that.
Yeah, and I think as we kind of talk about some of our dislikes here, then getting into our overall thoughts, I think the place we could focus on here to finish up likes is the characters. And there are a lot of characters that have a very small moment in the Justice League. The Joker is one of them, and he makes every second count. He's one that comes to mind. Deathstroke is another one that comes to mind if you watch the original Justice League. Again, a lot of different characters that you've seen in trailers already, or you've already heard about, or you've heard rumors of them showing up. These are characters that honestly get a little bit of shine, but they're not integral to the story. They're not like an important part of what the Justice League is. It's really more for setting up future films. And, it's kind of a shame. And that's going to be some of our dislikes, is where does this fall in all of that? But so many different characters got shine. One that stood out, Phil, was Cyborg. I mean, everybody is just speaking about him being the heart and soul of this movie. Yep. That is a character, kind of switching gears, that really deserves his shine.
Yeah, Ray Fisher, with everything that he has gone through, and he was kind of he was kind of at the front of the campaign as far as this whole Joss Whedon thing. And if you guys don't know what's going on, just a lot of reports of him creating a very hostile work environment, and Ray Fisher has kind of been at the front and center of that, right? And now people are coming out and supporting what he has said, specifically people from Buffy. Remember, Joss, that's years ago. We're talking about Joss Whedon, and him being difficult to work with. So Ray Fisher, I'm definitely really happy for him, happy for that character, because, when it comes to the Teen Titans, of course, he's always been one of my favorites for sure, even though I haven't, been a huge fan of that series, but he is a great character. So he gets, man, so many great moments in this. There are a couple that are huge standouts, and I would be probably upset too if Ray Fisher went in and saw the Joss Whedon version, and then that is what they made of his character. I'd be upset too.
Yeah, and we're not going to get into it too much. I think we've shied away from that conversation for quite a bit, but it seems pretty intentional. It seems pretty intentional that they cut his part in the movie, in the theatrical cut. And it's very, very disappointing. So we could talk about characters all day. And I think this might be a good comment for Kire that I see there kind of sitting out there, because we're going to kind of wrap up some of the comments here. Did this version go in more depth on some of the characters like Flash and Cyborg as far as their backstory compared to the original? The answer to that is yes. Cyborg is massive. It's a completely different character, honestly. He's not just this robotic one-note character that is forced to say things he doesn't want to say by a director that clearly made him say it. Like, it's so blatant that it's insulting. It really is. The Flash, though, gets a lot of extra shine. He's not just this rookie who keeps, hitting on Wonder Woman and not knowing what he's supposed to be doing in the team. Like, he's a completely different character, and what he does in the third act of this movie, the part 6, obviously the finale, is so different. I mean, he's literally in the theatrical version wasting time, not helping anybody. Again, not going to go into too many spoilers for that film
and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
but he's such a waste of time, and he's such an important and integral character here. And again, they did those characters so much justice.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
That was good, right?
Yeah,
that was good. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, they both of these characters get so again, not really much else to add, but Ezra Miller's Flash for sure. We hope that he gets his film eventually. That thing has been in flux for years now. Who knows if we're even going to get it? Like we said, who knows what the ramifications of this film are going to be at all? But they definitely are so important to this story in a way that, of course, they definitely didn't get a chance to be here in the original theatrical version. Let's get to we'll get to another question here, Eric, and then we're going to get into spoilers here very, very soon. This is actually a good point where we wanted to leave off before we gave our final reviews. Do you guys think, this is from T3, do you guys think there's potential for a Snyder Cut sequel? And this is, again, going to be very, very interesting because, Eric, you had mentioned that you were watching a lot of interviews from Zack Snyder. I haven't really seen that many, but you had mentioned he's been pretty open about what the next few films were going to be. So it seems like he's not being shy about what was going to happen. So maybe this isn't going to come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, there's really big plot points that he's revealing as if he's never going to come to the director's chair again. Now, he's made it sound like if he was asked, he wouldn't necessarily say no. And there are obviously rumors that they're considering it, as they should be. Because I think the overwhelming response, especially among the major comic book nerdy community, is that this movie was fantastic. And man, it was good. But it didn't go without having its problems. I mean, the fact that there are some things that are kind of shoehorned in there, you can really tell, especially at the end, what they just kind of forced in there to put in the movie. This movie didn't have to be 4 hours. The pacing is a little bit of a problem. And I am wondering if this is the version we would have gotten in 2017 had Zack Snyder been able to finish his film, outside of that family tragedy. I don't know that it is. I think there is a very good 3-hour movie in here somewhere, maybe 3.5, but definitely not 4 hours as necessary, as far as my opinion. And that does present a problem for what future Justice League's movies would be, because I don't know that that's where the studio is trying to go. The studio seems like they've made a complete course correction, and they're focusing on solo and individual films, minus the Suicide Squad remake. And I think that's where they're going to kind of go with this. I think they've missed their opportunity. You got to think about the multiverse and the things like the Flash movie continuously being delayed. Go look at what Marvel's doing. Marvel's about to steal all of that thunder with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. With all the casting news and rumors that we talk about, what did I miss on the podcast about Spider-Man 3 and all these characters being mentioned, being brought back, this should have been DC doing this and having that opportunity. And they missed it. And that's a negative on this film because honestly, now the fans are going to be divided. DC is trying to present us with something they want to do. And Zack Snyder presented us with something we want to move forward with as fans. And it's really disappointing, honestly.
Yeah, and you mentioned you made a good point there. Is he going to step back into the director's chair? And the thing for me is, of course, mentally, is he going to be able to do it? Now, I think as far as the actors and actresses here in this film, I think they're at this point now where they've definitely kind of created this bond with Zack where they would absolutely do it. Now, again, it doesn't really fit in to anything else, right? Because of course, you know, the events of, sorry to bring it up, Eric, the events of Wonder Woman 84 happened, but of course there's no mention of that really in the Snyder cut. You know, what's her name? What's the name of the Aquaman Mira? She has an accent that she didn't have before. So that
I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice that until afterwards. To be honest, it didn't bother me that much. But yeah, that was weird.
So there are all these inconsistencies now between the films that have released since then and the films that we have now. You know, so I think if they were to do it, HBO Max is the place to do it. However, is Warner Brothers going to be like, are we going to have multiple universes out there? I mean, maybe. I mean, like you said, Marvel is kind of trending in that direction. Maybe they just be like, you know what, screw it. Let's just give people what they want, because I know, as you mentioned, Eric, the fans are going to be clamoring for it. I don't even know what the next DC movie is that comes out. Is it Suicide Squad next year? I don't even know.
Probably, I think so. And then obviously they're teasing Shazam 2 and Black Adam and all of that. You know, to Philippe's point, kind of going back to that, I mean, the theatrical version is canon. So, I mean, you might have to watch it for the overall DCEU, but I really don't know that they're going to be able to continue down that path. People are not going to accept that movie. Hashtag not my Justice League. So I don't, that's what's going to happen. And it's going to be such a division. I think that just really causes some problems here. I mean, I'm glad they gave him the option to release his movie. They put in the money towards it. They're going to get a dividend on it for HBO. Nobody was coming to HBO Max to watch the original Justice League or Batman versus Superman. Funny enough, on Zack Snyder, he has like a playlist on HBO Max of movies he recommends. You know what movie's not on there? Batman versus Superman. Not on there. Justice League is on there. Other DC movies are on there. Watchmen's on there. No Batman versus Superman. So again, this is a huge driver towards that platform. It worked for both parties, but the long-term ramifications are going to be detrimental, in my opinion. I don't think they're going to work it out, and they haven't proven that they can.
This is true. And then, but to, you know, before we get to our final grades here, I will say, I never thought we'd see this. So I guess you can really never say never, because I never, ever thought we would see, when this movement started a few years ago, release the Snyder Cut. I was like, why would they do that? Why would they spend the money? Why, you know, what platform? It's not going to release in theaters. We're going to go watch a 4-hour movie in theaters. I will say this, if this had released in theaters and it was 4 hours, I definitely wouldn't have been rushing to go see it until, of course, you know, some of these positive reviews started coming out, but I wouldn't have been too excited about that. Remember when Endgame came out, they talked about, should we put an intermission in the middle of it? Eventually that never happened, but they would have had to do something as far as this. But, you know, I'm not sure if there are any more questions. We are wrapping up the spoiler-free part here in just a moment. Eric, I do want to point out, currently on Rotten Tomatoes, it is at a 74% certified fresh from critics and a 96% audience score for the Snyder Cut. Doesn't surprise me one bit.
No, not at all. And at the end of the day, whatever our grades are, obviously you can kind of get an idea that we have a pretty positive vibe towards this movie. There are a lot of people that don't, that thought they wasted 4 hours of their time. Regardless, Zack Snyder got to really just lay out his vision. And anytime a director can get to do that, I think is better. Just like Phil mentioned, there being a blank cut of every single movie. There being director's cuts. I really wish that, and I really hope that this movie proves, let the director release the movie that they want to release. And I think that with the pandemic that's happened and everything that's going on with movie theaters, we're going to see some of these longer movies that are meant to be this way come out more on these streaming platforms rather than just theaters. Because if you really dig deep into it, the theaters and the way that people have to condense their movies so they fill time slots for each, you know, every 2 to 2.5 hours, and how they make that revenue, all those things play into it. And it's really crazy, honestly, to kind of think about it. So I think this movie is going to move mountains for filmmakers, and that's a good thing, whether you like this or not.
Hopefully the next cut that we talk about, Eric, is the multiple versions of Mrs. Doubtfire. And if you guys haven't heard about that, we'll hopefully talk about it very soon on next week's episode of What I Missed. Shout out to Landon, a good friend of the show, who has been able to join us on a couple of episodes. Oh, we have a couple more questions coming in before we get into our grades here, Eric. This is from Stefan. I saw a rumor, not sure if it's true, that the Snyder Cut might have been a mini series. Do you think it would have worked well as a show instead of a movie? Awesome question. Yeah, I think that was initially the plan, was to release it in, I think, 4 parts, I believe, correct?
Yeah, in 4 parts, which would have been interesting, but honestly, the first if they did it that way, the first 2 parts for the most part would have been kind of boring. Like just think about what they did with
Right.
WandaVision and how they released those weekly and the backlash that came after 2 episodes, and by episode 3 and 4 they were like, "Oh, never mind. I was just being impatient." I feel like the same thing would have happened if they didn't release them all at the same time. The way that this movie is broken up though, it tells you part 1, this is the title of this part. Part 2, part 3, part 4. It tells you in the timestamps. So you can choose to watch it like a miniseries, but they also give you the option to watch it as a movie. And I think ultimately that was the better play because I definitely wouldn't have wanted to just drag this thing out. This thing has been dragged out enough. I would have hated for Zack Snyder to have to go through whatever 4 weeks or however long it would have been to release all 4. Maybe they release them all at once, but again, I think this was the way to do it.
I definitely agree. That's a really good point for sure. Yeah, it's really difficult, and like you said, Eric, Marvel is seeing it now. It's difficult to make people wait in an age where everyone is just so used to getting everything right now. So I think this definitely was the best route. And again, you can split it up into multiple watches. That's perfectly fine. You can say, oh, I'll watch Act 1 and 2 tonight, 2 and 3 tomorrow. 4 and or yeah, whatever, numbers are hard, but you can split them up into multiple viewings. Let's get to another question here. Landon coming through. What's something you guys found that shocked you the most with the difference in the original cut to this one? And we've kind of talked about it already, Eric. It's just how different these 2 versions of the film are. Now, granted, Snyder had an extra hour and a half to work with, but what's that meme where it's like they butchered my boy, man? That's probably how he felt watching the Joss Whedon version, which I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's never watched it. I wouldn't want to watch it.
Yeah, and like I said, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but those scenes with Cyborg are just stand out. I mean, it's a totally different character. It's very malicious what they did to that man. It's very intentional. It's very blatant. The fact that they did that. The direction they took with Flash was another big thing. Another person that we didn't mention was a couple characters, obviously, but Batman, much more hopeful in this film. And that stood out to me a lot from his growth from Batman versus Superman. Superman, obviously, kind of the same, better facial features, because obviously there's no removal of his mustache, which I'll never understand that decision.
I saw a clip of that earlier today. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot about that.
And with all due respect, the only thing I remember was the backside of Wonder Woman in Justice League.
Oh yeah,
because all they kept doing was showing shots of her in her tight pants, and that's what I remembered. And in this movie, I remembered her for being, as she should be, a complete badass character, which is what I love about Wonder Woman. So
which is why you loved Wonder Woman 84 so much.
No, they did not do any of they literally took everything good about Wonder Woman and was like, no. So you could always check that out on this YouTube page after this, since up until now, this was a Wonder Woman 84 review page.
Yeah, this is the only thing. Let's see. This is the last question that comes through from T3 again. How did Zack Snyder end up directing the Justice League in the first place? This was part of, if you missed earlier in the episode, this was part of a 5-part series. The first one being Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice being the second one, and Justice League being the middle film. I think one thing that is just so apparent, Eric, when you look at it, is just the difference in the movie posters as well. If you guys have seen the Joss Whedon movie poster, it's like this cartoonish, awful, like one of the worst movie posters, honestly, that I've ever seen.
I hated it so much.
It's so bad. And then the Zack Snyder, and of course the Snyder Cut one is, this black and white, awesome shot here too. We've got another question coming through from Landon. Moving forward with the DCEU, what is not a well-known character you like to see make their appearance? Personally, I'd pick Static Shock. I'll be honest with you, Landon. As far as the Rogues Gallery, as far as the DC characters go, there are not too many. I'll be selfish here because I've been watching the Harley Quinn animated series. Kite Man. Give me Kite Man. Ryan Reynolds as Kite Man.
I really wish you didn't back this Kite Man hype train as much as you have.
Kite Man.
Pretty disappointing. There's obviously a lot of characters. I really would like to see, and this is a
Bane. I like to see Bane done right.
Yeah, I'd like to see Bane done right, but I don't know if they can make that like a villain only movie. I want to see something like Joker, but with another villain from especially the Batman Rogue Gallery. But for not well-known characters, Static Shock is absolutely my pick. So you pretty much stole it right out of my mouth because I've been waiting for a Static Shock movie for quite some time. And I think that it would honestly be as good as like a Spider-Man Miles Morales type reception. I think people would really be behind that. You obviously are behind Kite Man 2022. So with that, we are no longer going to be talking about spoiler-free stuff. But before we get into spoilers, Phil, what are your final overall thoughts? And why don't we go ahead and give this thing a grade for those that are just sticking for the spoiler-free part?
Yeah, I will give Kite Man a 10 out of 10.
No, sir. No, sir. That's you're getting off topic there. I'm sorry. You are
the Snyder. Sorry, I apologize. Snyder Cut. So, guys, I am so happy to admit that I was wrong about Zack Snyder's Justice League. Anyone that has ever worked on a creative vision that never came to its final form, never got to finish it, they can appreciate what he's been able to do here. I can't help but feel a little sad though, because I don't know that we'll ever get a payoff to some of the stories that were told in these 4 hours. Did it need to be 4 hours? Definitely not. But with the circumstances given and the platform provided by HBO Max, who cares? Split it up into multiple viewings if you have to, but definitely make time for it. The DCEU has been struggling to find its footing since day one, and I hope this is a jumping off point they can build upon, although, as Eric mentioned, it may create more problems than solutions, because at the end of the day, these are iconic characters, and they have incredible stories to be told. I'm giving Zack Snyder's Justice League an 8 out of 10 and label it an absolute must-watch for superhero and movie fans alike. Just make sure you make some time for bathroom breaks, but if anything, watch it for autumn.
Yeah, for autumn for sure. I definitely appreciate that little nice gesture at the end of the movie. That was it honestly that didn't bring me to tears, but it was just not, I don't know why I didn't expect it, but when I saw it, I was like, yeah. That makes sense. And for Zack Snyder, this is a complete justification of why he was given the responsibilities of this trilogy saga in addition to Batman versus Superman, Man of Steel. And the way that I view this movie and the journey to this movie is exactly how it looks. It's an odyssey. And an odyssey is not for everyone. I've always enjoyed that type of story. I've enjoyed movies. The movie that came up to me in my mind the most when watching this, probably because of the theme songs from Themyscira in the movie, it was Troy. A lot of people don't really love that movie, but it is an odyssey type film that you can only really appreciate by enjoying every second of that movie and going through the journey. This movie's journey started at Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, all the behind the scenes and offline stuff that led to the Snyder Cut. And all of those things combined is what really let me enjoy the hell out of this movie. I kept pushing it off. I watched Batman versus Superman, the Ultimate Edition, just so I could be able to speak a little bit better to this one. And I'm glad I did. Although initially when I went to go put it on the movie, I kept delaying it. I was on my phone. But once it was on, I never took my attention off of it. And that's just a big win compared to not only the original, but Zack Snyder in general and a lot of the issues that he has. Now, this movie does have its issues, and in spoilers, I think we'll be able to speak to it more. But a filmmaker gets a win here. He gets to make the movie that he didn't get to make because he lost his daughter. And at the end of the day, we all got to win by getting to see a fantastic movie that should have never happened. So if I'm just going to give it a grade, an 8.5 out of 10 for me. And honestly, I'm on such a high right now, I could probably give it a 9, but I just don't think it quite hit that. I think, though, that when I look back at this gave me the same feelings that I got watching The Avengers, and that's all I ever really wanted from a Justice League movie, and I got it.
Absolutely. So, guys, we're going to transition here in a moment to the spoiler part of the episode. So if you have stuck around with us this far, thank you so much. But if you do want to hop out and come back later and check it out after you've watched the film, definitely do that. Here we have another one from Jay. Well, y'all convinced me to check it out. Good stuff, and keep grinding. Thanks so much, Jay. Of course, Eric and I work with Jay a lot. Me, of course, quite a bit with the Believe in the Jaguars podcast. We'll have to get Jay on again soon. Philin says, agree with James. Always appreciate your opinions. Looking forward to all the content you guys will have going forward. Thank you guys so much for all the questions. Honestly, those were awesome questions, especially the one about Kite Man. But guys, if we are going to move to the spoiler discussion of this episode, so again, if you want to head out, that is perfectly fine. It is going to get a little lengthy. It's a 4-hour film. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. So Eric, I guess we'll just kind of transition right into it here. Man, there's I don't even know where to start. I guess we start from the very, very beginning.
Yeah, so this is where I took notes.
I'm gonna go take a nap, and I'll be back in about an hour.
Listen, this was an interesting movie because I normally don't take notes during movies, which is something I feel like I should do when I'm reviewing movies. But, but yeah. And Phil, speaking of you coming out of camera, we talked about those cool, nifty features that you didn't use.
I know. I realized that. I realized that as we were going on. I was like, well, it's too late now.
Yeah, frame for frame. Look, you could clearly see that I'm talking, and then you could just move over to Phil when he's talking. That didn't happen, but I guess we're doing it now. So we're going to go by parts. I did make some notes. If you guys have some specific things you want to talk about, feel free now to go ahead and put those comments in there. Again, it's really going to drive the conversation, but for the most part, we're going to try not to hit them until we get to the parts of the film that they were in. So part one, the intro, Phil, was really, really cool. I mean, right from the start, you get that huge yell from Superman. It went on a little long, but it was right from Batman versus Superman. Do you remember how the original Justice League started for comparison?
No.
Yeah. if I'm correct, the original Justice League started with CGI mustache Superman being recorded on a camera.
I forgot about that.
Complete different vibe from the start.
Right then, because I think did we watch this? I think we watched it together. I think I was still living here, and we were like, oh no.
It was pretty much from the start. It was really bad. So, that starts off. Then we get into Aquaman and Batman's interaction. And I thought that was perfectly fine. Although, and I feel like, now this was probably in part two. Actually, no, this was probably in part one. At one point, they start singing, and then this weird lady sniffs his jacket.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things I wrote down. That was kind of
really weird.
Did we
right?
need that? Yeah, the Icelandic singing montage is what I wrote down.
This is an example of some of the stuff that could have easily been cut out, but he felt it was needed.
Does he come out of the ocean with the shirt? And then when he goes back in, he then takes it off? Because he did it twice.
There's a lot of logistical questions there, but weird intro. Lois Lane, this is where I started realizing that, and apparently this is an issue with Zack Snyder, is the music choices. The score is good. I want to make that really, really well known. I like the score. It was way too campy in Batman versus Superman. A little bit better here as far as when they played certain like themes, the Amazon theme, stuff like that. But the music, they were just these weird songs that kept playing throughout the movie, like this Lois Lane scene. Why are we doing?
She's getting coffee.
Yeah, it's just so.
That's why it's 4 hours long. There's too much slow-mo.
Okay. So in part one, there's a ton of slow-mo, and I think this is going to come to bite one particular character in the ass later, so we'll talk about that. But one character that stood out immediately, that Wonder Woman scene was so cool. I don't remember it being that cool, and I'm pretty sure there was stuff they cut out. Again, I have not watched the theatrical version, and I will not. I'm just not going to. But I did watch a video on the differences, and I believe one of the differences was the Wonder Woman scene, which was really, really cool. Then you had the Steppenwolf battle where he's trying to get the first mother box. That was fairly decent. And again, at this point, this is where I'm starting to notice a lot of the slow-mo. But Phil, those are some of the highlights of what happened in part one. So anything stand out to you either way?
I definitely early on in the first two parts of the film, because there's a lot from the theatrical version, and I did start to kind of like doze off. I had to like readjust and commit and like, okay, I need to pay attention. It turned out that the stuff that I fell asleep during, it was all in the original movie, so I didn't miss anything. But yeah, it gets off to a little bit of a slow burn, and I was getting a little worried early on.
Yeah, and I mean, early on is tough because then part two kind of comes into play, and this is where we get another scene with Aquaman, and it's when he's in front of the ocean, and this music plays, and then it's just really slow-mo. And I remember somewhat of that scene being in the original one, but again, just really odd. Speaking of Aquaman, though, this is where I started to notice some stuff. Better setup for the first Aquaman movie. William Dafoe is actually in this one. I very much appreciated that cameo. You got to see Star Labs, which was integral part of the movie. And then you got to see Darkseid in this part. Although Gal Gadot does go into a huge monologue of backstory and this is what happened in olden times. And it was
that
fine.
was in the that's in the theatrical cut. This one was more detailed. So
and it was about Darkseid. So
right.
Yeah. So I mean, it was fine. Not amazing though. And Darkseid got his ass beat. So I don't not a real good intro. Not a real good intro at all. That's really all that
Thanos would never.
No, complete difference as far as when they actually you see them fighting. But that's really what I took notes on for part 2. Part 2 was probably where a lot of the cutting board stuff could go if they were going to really make this a theatrical release. Was there anything during that time? Again, the Darkseid intro, they're doing that whole thing where now they've lost the mother box. So they're trying to get that arrow with the flames to tell Wonder Woman what's going on. So I'm assuming around this point, you're probably still falling asleep.
The part where I think I've seen a lot of reaction to the reveal of the lantern that was in the fight against Darkseid. That was a pretty big deal. Of course, that's not a character that I'm familiar with, but I do know that people were kind of wondering who that lantern character was in the theatrical version of the film. But yeah, again, not too much that that was really keeping me awake is kind of a bad example, but it was kind of, again, part 2. I was just like, all right, I got 4 more hours, 5 more hours of this. Here we go. Or 3 more hours of this. But yeah.
So then we get to part 3 and we're going to slow down here once we get to a certain part, but this is what I'm talking about. The first 3 parts, a little weird and a little slow. And this is what I mean by it being an odyssey. It's a very long journey. It's a very long story that he's trying to tell. It's a very long journey. Barry Allen appears, and then the weird music again. Weird music choice number 3 is what I wrote down. And I just don't understand why we did that. Then when he goes to save Iris, it's like, again, it's like really, really slow. Like I understand the Flash is fast, really slow. And I'm like, this is not the character to stay in slow-mo for this long. Like, just kind of show it really quickly and then move on. He's fast. We get it. We don't need to see everything else move slow. It didn't stand out to me in a negative way in the theatrical version, but at this point, I was watching The Flash and I was already getting a little irritated at that choice with the flash forwards and the slow-mos. I was getting a little upset, but it wasn't anything that took me out.
Yeah, here we have a comment again from another one from T3. I think they did a really good job of drawing the movie before a lot of the scenes, like when Flash points through the glass. Absolutely insane as far as the artwork goes. Yeah, I mean, when it is done, we've seen it done in certain instances. Of course, we always point to the Quicksilver scenes from the X-Men movies. There are parts where it can be done where it's really, really cool. But again, as you mentioned, this is Barry Allen's introduction, and which is, of course, one of the high points of this film is that everybody gets their little bit of shine. And yeah, it was just really strange. I did like the part, though, of him like running so fast that he came out of his shoes. I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah,
and like he mentioned, it was really cool through the window, but then he's like slow all the way to the car, like all the way. And it was really long. That's all. And again, that's me nitpicking for a movie I gave an 8.5, but that's why it really can't get a 9 for me, because that early part hindered the movie very, very badly for me. But this is also where we get an introduction into Cyborg. And there's a lot of mystery around Cyborg. Why is he a weapon? What is going on here, as well? But his ability is pretty cool and it fits the modern day age. Like I really liked how they broke down. And did they need to show us give that lady money at the ATM? No, but I thought it worked. And it was stuff like that where they broke it down like, well, damn, Cyborg is actually pretty freaking cool.
Yep.
And he's actually really important to the story for a lot of other reasons. So, you get Cyborg, then Batman meets the Flash. That was a really fun interaction. I really enjoyed that. Wonder Woman meeting Cyborg. That interaction was good. And then I think this might have been in part 4, but that rooftop scene with Gordon, Commissioner Gordon, always makes me laugh where they disappear and Flash is like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
That was rude.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed all of that. So those were all the things that kind of happened about part 3 going into part 4. Again, we're in that spoiler section here. So Phil, any thoughts, about what stood out to you in those interactions or that part?
There's also, I think, in this part, there is another scene that's totally unnecessary where we watch Diana and Alfred make tea.
See, I disagree.
Why is that there?
I disagree because I enjoyed the hell out of Alfred in this movie.
I did too.
I thought him getting those scenes were fun. It was really just more a scene for Alfred because like that's how I am too. Like if somebody's doing something that I'm used to doing, I'm like, hey, everything good? Okay, I'm just gonna watch you do it.
You should maybe try that a little differently.
I'm not gonna tell you how to do it. No, wait, just pause. Just can you just a little bit less? That I related to that, so I guess that was more a me thing. But Alfred is my spirit animal. I don't care.
Yeah, to each their own. And we'll answer this question really quick from Tony. What's up, Tony? Is it true that Batman drops the F-bomb? If so, I'm going to watch it now. Elbow cop. Yes, he definitely does. There are 3 in this film, which gave it the R rating. And yeah, but he definitely does. We do get an F-bomb.
One of them is really strong. It's really fucking strong.
Is it the cyborg one? Is that what you're talking about? Or the one? No, no.
Okay, the one at the end.
Never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, we will get there, so stick around. So now we're about halfway through the film, just kind of talking about spoilers, right? And I feel like this is where we're going to be in the meat of what was going on as far as Justice League. So this is the big fight with Steppenwolf initially. There's a lot of information dumps that are here. Wonder Woman's a badass. They're obviously going to save Cyborg's dad. Martian Manhunter also just appears. I thought that was weird to have him be Martha Kent in that scene, because then that made you not sure if that was really Martha Kent later on. I thought they could have just left that as a reveal for the end. Did you feel any way at that point seeing Martian Manhunter at all?
No, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to introduce this character now, which is, of course, a very, very important character as far as a founding member of the Justice League. And we had known that character was Martian Manhunter, of course, but we also knew that we was supposed to be in the original version of the film, but I wasn't expecting that to be the moment where he showed up. So yeah, I was definitely a little taken off guard.
Yeah, a little bit, but that big fight part, that's pretty much what part 4 is about. In the lead up to them realizing that the Mother Box can bring back Superman. So what were your thoughts about that initial fight with Steppenwolf, as far as all of that? Characters that stood out to me again, the Flash, not just being a rookie on the job, that was better. Cyborg, him being able to take over, that big machine. I think it's called like the Nightcrawler.
That was a good Alfred interaction too.
Yeah, it makes more sense though now. It makes more sense instead of him just being some random guy. He's like, no, I got this. Crab. Yeah, I've got this. He does randomly just disappear and go grab the Mother Box and bring it back. But again, you understand.
He does walk. I forgot. He just.
I was lost. I was like, why did he just leave them? Is the water not rising anymore?
Like, I've got it. Like, oh,
okay. Yeah,
I've been looking for this.
Really weird. Again, there were some decisions throughout the movie that didn't work, but it's all like for every negative thing, there are 2 great things about the movie. So this was the section that I thought was really good. Phil, anything about that first fight or anything in this part that stood out to you?
Yeah, definitely the little moment where Flash and I think a version of this is in the original cut, but of him, tapping Diana's sword and getting it back to her. I think Diana, of course, looked like a badass again, which is, as you mentioned, how she is meant to be portrayed, this incredibly strong character. So there was definitely a lot better this time around. And I think a lot of that just has to do with Steppenwolf has a much better design. He looks menacing, he looks like he could whoop their ass. And, at some certain points, he certainly did. So this definitely worked a lot better than it did the first time around.
Yeah. And then we get into going into part 5. We get to see that whole interaction where they go to revive Superman and they go ahead and fight Superman. I thought that whole scene was done well. I was happy to see the Flash part stay in there where Superman looks over. That's one of my favorite scenes from the theatrical version. One of my only favorite scenes. And, I thought Lois Lane at that point had been shown enough. And yeah, she's grieving. But they threw enough in there when you get to see Lois Lane finally step up to Superman and be like, I can't believe you're back. Like, stop, let's go. Like, it makes sense. And I had just watched Batman versus Superman, and I forget how much I enjoy that relationship. I think I really shit on their relationship probably early on. I don't feel that way anymore. I think Amy Adams is a pretty good Lois Lane. And I like Superman. I like Henry Cavill as Superman. So their relationships really worked for me. And that meant something kind of looking at it again. So that was pretty cool overall. Was there anything stand out there? I thought the interaction with Flash there in particular, having to zoom towards the mother box was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely glad that those parts had stayed in. And for me, having never seen Man of Steel, the only references I've had to Superman have been BVS, and then of course at first the theatrical cut. And Superman is a character that I don't really like too much anyway, just because he seems like he's just too perfect, I guess. Of course, that perfect to the point that they had to create a substance to give him a weakness, right? But, and we'll get to this here as far as in the final fight, this is finally when I'm coming around to being like, okay, now I get why so many people gravitate toward this character. And again, this is when I started, I think really act 3, towards the end of act 3, act 4 is when I really started perking up and be like, okay, there's something special is happening. And then, when this whole scene comes down, and then of course you have Aquaman saying, don't do it. I like the whole part where he just like points at Barry, and Barry's like, I'm so sorry.
Again, Barry Allen was so funny in this movie. It was really, really fantastic, honestly. And I really enjoyed him, and I like Cyborg's interactions as well. So a comment here, Cyborg can control any computer on the planet and hack into anything, but then he has no control over his own arm. Kind of pisses me off. That was weird. And that's what makes me think that some of these scenes were crafted afterwards and they didn't mesh well. We're going to talk about that, especially at the end. But there were scenes that didn't quite mesh well together, that didn't make sense. That did. I forgot that happened in the theatrical version. And I was wondering, like, why do you have an auto defense system? How do you know about this? Like, this hadn't happened before. There wasn't like a scene where like a very ferocious cat had like screamed at him and he was like, defenses, and just like got ready to like kill that cat. That would have at least let me know, oh, okay, he can't control it, because who would kill a cat? That doesn't make sense. Well, yeah, maybe. So I didn't get it. I didn't understand it. That's a great point. But yeah,
but really overall but again, overall that whole scene did work again. And yeah, what I started to understand why so many people appreciate Henry Cavill and his portrayal of this character, because for me, for my entire life, I've just never gotten it. I've just like, I don't get Superman. I just don't.
Yeah, and then on top of that, after Superman just disappears and is like, Lois, we're gonna go. I don't know who you are, but you're pretty. So then just let's go. So zombie Superman is
like Poochie and Simpsons. Like
he's just flying away. Yeah, so he flies away, and Cyborg's dad then dies. Which to that point, I was enjoying the arc that Cyborg and his father were having at that point. Like he sees them and he trusts his son. So he says, hey, nothing's going on here, does that whole shebang with the mother box. And then Steppenwolf comes, and I was so confused why his dad had to die. So confused. And there were a couple times in the movie where this had happened, where I get the information afterwards. But I got it. And then I understood. I was like, oh, okay, that's why he sacrificed himself. But I thought that payoff was pretty good, because that sucked to watch. Again, Cyborg is a character that got a lot of development, but I felt bad for that guy. He was just getting so much thrown his way throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, that part was also interesting to me, because they clearly just forgot about the mother box. Like, it landed in the middle of this crowd and no one thought, I should go secure this really important relic. Of course, they were fighting Superman, but I just thought it was funny that at least his dad had the wherewithal to grab it and, do what he did. Comment here for Tony on his way out. I'm going to watch it, may or may not finish it tonight, because 4 hours. Anyway, long-time listener, first-time commenter. Keep it up, you guys. You all rock. Thanks so much, Tony, for
appreciate
coming
that.
By. There is another comment here from T3. Why is there a scene where Barry Allen's love interest has a hot dog wiener in front of her face while Nick Cave is playing? I wish we knew the answer to that one. Kind of going back to that scene.
I thought he was gonna. The scene was going.
I thought he was gonna eat it.
I thought he was gonna make himself a hot dog. That's how slow the scene was going. I really thought, I was like, he's really gonna make a hot dog, because I was looking for the ketchup and the mustard. I saw the bun. I was concerned. Yeah, and appreciate that, Tony, because my brother said he was going to watch this and literally was like, I want you guys to make this 4 hours so I don't have to watch the Snyder Cut for 4 hours and it'll be the same thing. But Stefan, you really should watch it. So part 5, we pretty much wrap that up in a tiny little bow. And then we get into part 6, which is, man, that and the epilogue. The epilogue is crazy too, because it's like such a small part of the movie, but so much to talk about. Part 6 is the finale. That's where Cyborg again just continues to stand out. The Flash continues to stand out. The Clark reunion with him and his mother, and then Lois there. I felt that. I enjoyed that at that point. The movie again was a journey. So I got to appreciate that moment a little bit more for what it was. You've got a more hopeful Batman, and that was kind of resonant throughout the whole film. But there's one part where Alfred's kind of asking him, like, why are you guys going to go do this? And he's just like, faith, hey, faith, Alfred, faith. And like, what a thing for that particular Bruce Wayne to say. And they were building on that the whole film. Bruce Wayne is a character that I thought really, stood out much better in this movie. Batman, again, still pointless as far as the Justice League, just like in Batman versus Superman. I don't know what he's there for. I don't know. He wasn't there to fight Doomsday. That's why Superman died.
At least it's a self-aware Batman, going back to where he, of course, with the Barry Allen scene in the car, and he's like, what is your superpower again?
But
he's
even
like,
early,
I'm rich. At least he is aware of it.
He's aware of it, because even earlier with the fight in Steppenwolf, like in part 4, he's like, oh, it's my turn. And he does the Nightcrawler thing for like 2 minutes, then gets kicked out and Cyborg takes over. So he can't even use his own machines. So Batman, again, really silly in the Justice League in general, Batman versus Superman. But and again, he's got cool moments. I would love to see, we're going to skip ahead to this really quick. I would have loved to see what they were going to do with him in his own solo movie. Yeah. I would still really like to see that. A more grounded Ben Affleck, Bruce Wayne would probably be the best Batman.
And that's one of the things I mentioned why I was a little sad when I did my final thoughts, because again, I don't think that we're ever going to see these things. Like you said, you see this Bruce Wayne, this version of Bruce Wayne over time, understanding that he has made a mistake and transitioning from being the defender of Gotham to being a defender of the entire world, and I think that's what is really evident here, which I am very sad that we probably won't ever get to see that. But yeah, it was funny that he kind of just like, he did pretty much just disappear at moments, because there's not really a whole lot. But whole lot he can do.
You know what we didn't lose? We didn't lose. Thank God. I was honestly scared. My man. We didn't lose it. We didn't lose it. We didn't lose that gem of Aquaman saying, my man.
We didn't need that.
So good. Zack Snyder's vision, man. It's too much for your little brain to comprehend. So
I guess so.
Let's talk about the final fight of the movie. And then we're going to talk about the epilogue and, some of the scenes, the characters. Were they just fan service? Were they, beneficial? Did we like them? A lot there to talk about. But part 6, the final boss fight, I'm going to let you kind of start that conversation. What did you think, especially given what you saw originally? What did you think about this finale?
Again, just so much better. Steppenwolf seems like an actual threat for the first time, and he is, again, they're kind of getting their ass whooped at certain instances. There is that scene that's actually in our intro or in the thumbnail for this video. There is the scene of all of them with like the kind of Avengers Age of Ultron-esque scene with Batman and the Batmobile, and then it has Wonder Woman, Flash, and Aquaman in it, and Cyborg, all of them kind of given that superhero jump off, which I thought was really, really cool. And then just to kind of go back to where I'm finally understanding that Superman is this great character. When he finally shows up, man, I was hyped. I was like, yes, let's go. There's that awesome scene where he punches Steppenwolf, and then Diana, does the gauntlet thing, and then Aquaman just whacks him with his trident. Like, I was like, yes, let's go. Like, at that point, I was, of course, all in on this, and the whole scene was great. Of course, can we talk about really quick the parademon with the sniper, like the perfect accuracy?
Yeah, that was
like, man, sign that guy up for the Stormtrooper initiative because they need him.
Mind you, Batman's only job was to take out the parademons across the thing. So just
Again,
a reminder.
Not to jump too far ahead, but did you get a sense that they made Batman grapple his entire way up the tower? As one of you can fly, pick him up, but he is struggling at the end. He's like, ugh.
He is definitely he is definitely the weaker one in the group project. He's definitely.
How long were they standing up there waiting for that shot of them together? Because Bruce Wayne is struggling to climb up a tower.
Yeah,
go get him.
That guy was tired. So, the final fight I thought was really cool. What they did with Flash was fantastic, and this is what we talked about earlier. And again, I see so many of you guys that are still here watching. Thank you guys for that. We were talking about this, like, oh yeah, we'll do like spoiler free stuff the first 15, and then we'll talk about spoilers probably the rest of the time, probably like an hour, and we're like just finishing up. So appreciate that. But there were so many things that just didn't really make sense why they cut it out of the beginning part of the movie. And I love that comment because yes, I don't think Martian Manhunter was necessary at all. And we're going to get into that. But the final fight, this is so much better than the original. This is probably, I would assume that the Flash scene specifically was actually in the original cut. And they just said, no, they said, we're not going to do it. And what DC needs to do, and I've been saying this for years now, is set the reset button with the Flash movie. Just do Flashpoint. It's right there for you in the palm of your hands. Just do it. And this movie literally showed us Barry, and this is why he doesn't do that, because what's going to happen in the Snyderverse universe, as far as if this movie came out as originally intended, well, Barry Allen's going to do it, save the Justice League. Why wouldn't he go save his mom? That's exactly where that's going to happen. That's exactly where you get that emotion. The CW show did a great job.
I was going to say, didn't that happen in the show?
It did. I don't watch it anymore because it just kind of started to hit the same CW tropes. But those first 2 seasons of The Flash, especially that first one where he has to go save his mom and he has to choose not to, Jesus Christ, dude, it is emotional. And I feel like that could have been such a good payoff. But then they saw that and they said, no, let's not do that. Let's make the Flash save this random Russian family the entire time. What a stupid choice. And that's where it comes. Either Joss Whedon is just ignorant or he was just encouraged by ignorant people, because to see those scenes and say, oh, that's not good, let's go your route. And then to see what that route was, again, very eye-opening. But anything else on part 6? Again, I think the biggest thing here was Aquaman getting to keep his signature line.
No.
But anything else before we get to the epilogue, which I think we're both dying to talk about?
I also think there's a part that was not in the theatrical version, or that was in the theatrical version. Isn't there? Oh no, you know what? That is the moment that leads up to the My Man. Yet no, it was, never mind now. I'm upset now. No, it was, again, just so much better than the theatrical version. And I saw a comment on the subreddit talking about how, of course, the Snyder Cut has all this representation and it has, Amazons of color and all these other characters. And then it's like Joss Whedon's like, ooh, like a Russian family. let's save them. And I was really worried. I was like, oh crap, are we going to see this family again? Like, are they going to pop up? And I'm glad to say that they were completely absent. So that was really, really good. But yeah, as far as just a fight overall, and then of course that moment where Diana, chops off Steppenwolf's head, and then his head goes through the portal right in front of Darkseid. Awesome, man. Like chef's kiss. So cool. And then you get like that little, of course, tease that would have set up these other Justice League movies that hopefully maybe we'll get. But, it just worked so well. It was great.
Yeah, fun fact, my wife was stuck watching it. She said she wouldn't watch it, and then she watched it about 2 parts too late and was like, I'm just going to stop. And I was like, you didn't really miss anything. Just watch. And then my son finally decided to kind of step around and like get interested. And I'm like, okay, well, he might not want to watch this. We get to the end and she covers his eyes for the Steppenwolf head cut off, but then doesn't cover his eyes when Darkseid squishes his head. So that was, it was very, parenting, a lot of fun. We're still working on it, obviously. So thought that was an interesting share, but let's talk about the epilogue, because Phil, There's so much. So what do you want to start with first?
Well, first off, of course, we have the scene with Deathstroke. That is in the theatrical version. I think that was the post-credit scene, if I remember correctly, right? Or no, was it just
it is, but the context is different. So in the
Right.
original one, they were talking about creating their own league, and that's pretty much it. And in this one, it's a direct tie-in by revealing Bruce Wayne's name as Batman
to the Batman movie,
which I still really badly want. I mean, I want Robert Pattinson to be amazing. I want that movie to be good. I think it will be good. But damn, I really want a Ben Affleck versus Deathstroke movie.
To talk about how useless this Batman is, though, thank God there are no superpowered villains in Gotham, apparently.
But Batman is better
20 years.
Batman is better in Gotham. Justice League Batman has never made sense. He shouldn't be in the Justice League, honestly. He should just sit back.
He can be like Justice League or like funded by Wayne Tech.
By whatever, Wayne Enterprise. So like he just like comes to a fundraiser once a year. Like that's all you really need from Batman. Yeah, but I would have loved to see a Deathstroke Bruce Wayne Ben Affleck movie like that.
Yeah.
I really like the actor, and I'm gonna forget his name, botch it, so I'm not even gonna say it, but he is a great casting.
Angelo.
There you go. See, you did it. Great casting as Slade Wilson. I loved it.
And Janello.
So I think, then they tease the Justice League, obviously, and I hope there's more seats, blah, blah, blah. What we want to talk about is the nightmare scene. So why don't we just do it? Mm-hmm. I loved all of it. I loved the uncertainty as to why the hell all these characters were there. I do want to say first, though, it was odd. And they did force it in there because it was weird to get the Bruce Wayne to Deathstroke reveal to set up the Batman and then see Slade working with Batman. Yeah, really odd. So, but what did you like about it? I want to give you the floor for that to kind of dive in because I feel like there's so many things we could talk about here.
Well, one person that's definitely missing is Kite Man. So let's talk about.
You didn't have to put that back up on the screen. You didn't have to do that.
Oh, sorry. I have too much creative control here. Yeah, of course, like you mentioned, it was definitely very odd because you see Deathstroke with Batman, and then of course you see Mira and Flash, Cyborg, and of course you're wondering what the hell's going on. And of course, this entire film, I'm like, where the hell is the nightmare scene? Because they have featured Joker in the trailers so prevalently, and wondering when it was going to come up. I was like, wow, it's really going to be like the last thing or one of the last things that we see, huh? So, off the bat, of course, you see this like this weathered Bruce Wayne, and you're kind of wondering who is the person they're talking about that is hunting them down, and then you get that interaction between him and the Joker, and man, I cannot think of anything in terms of entertainment right now that I want more at this very moment than seeing that Ben Affleck and Jared Leto interaction with these two characters in some sort of film. Obviously they're talking about how they bring up Harley Quinn, they name drop up there. They don't name drop it. They talk about Robin, and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, when we had this backstory hinted at in, I think, Batman vs Superman, right, where you see the Robin suit with the Joker writing on it, and like I said, I can't think of anything more that I would want right now than to get a whole movie of just those two going at it. Like it's disappointing that we won't ever get it, and also kind of disappointing that we never saw this type of Joker from Jared Leto, if that's what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I don't want to say stole the show because it's like a whole 4-hour movie, but let's give Jared Leto some props. I always thought he could be the Joker, and some people didn't like it, and that's perfectly fine. Some of you don't like the Joaquin Phoenix Joker. Some of you out there don't like Heath Ledger's Joker. You're wrong, but that's fine too.
I want names.
There are people out there, but this was good. Honestly, I loved it. I watched it several times. I will rewatch that.
How'd you feel about the laugh?
I was fine with it.
Well,
I was fine with his laugh. I think his laugh reminds us so much of the Suicide Squad movie that it's hard to get that out of our brains. But it was fine. It was perfectly fine. It didn't have to be amazing. And I think he played his version of the Joker the way he should have. And I thought he did great. I love the scene where he says, how about a truce, Bruce? And then he gets into that craziness where he's like, you can rip it up, and then we could talk about why you sent a boy wonder to do a man's job. That honestly slaps so hard. If you are not going to watch, this is probably just for Stefan. If you're not going to watch the Justice League, just watch the nightmare scene with Joker. And then when Batman's literally like, and make no mistake, I will fucking kill you. Like, that is honestly amazing. It is so fantastic. I can't speak highly enough, but what I like the most about that scene is I knew it was going to be Superman. That's what they were hinting towards with the Flash coming back to Ben Affleck, Bruce Wayne in Batman versus Superman. An Injustice storyline would be fantastic. It's a smart idea to then lead the third one after you reverse that future to be the fight against Darkseid. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm really disappointed we're never going to get that, but who knows? Maybe we'll get Kite Man, apparently, because Kite Man just continues to pop up. I just don't get it.
Landon's got my back here. You know, when you talked about Injustice, Ed Boon, of course, the creator of Mortal Kombat, he did send out a tweet and said, I love Zack Snyder's Justice League and have a suggestion for the sequel name, Zack Snyder's Injustice. Like, print money, man. Like, how amazing would that be? Oh, my God.
The nightmare scene in Batman versus Superman was cool too. I would love an entire movie set in that world. And I loved just seeing this random group, not like the Suicide Squad, this random group.
Yeah, when I saw Mira, I was really surprised.
And Mira was cool. Like, what the fight she had with Steppenwolf, she was like pulling the water and then the blood out of his eyes. Like, that was pretty dope. I'm not gonna lie. Older white-haired Slade Wilson. I'm a big Deathstroke fan, especially Manu Bennett from the show, from Arrow on the CW. Just fantastic. Really, really good work. I love that character. It would be so cool. Then you just throw Joker in there. And why is he there? What reason would you have? Assuming that he's not the one who kills Lois Lane, because that's possible too. It's crazy. It's so nuts to see this group together. You know, this older, more refined Flash. You know, Cyborg there with a freaking machine gun now on there, going all Terminator. It's so cool. So ridiculously cool. And you can make that a movie and change it up. Again, it's money. It's gold. It's what everybody wants. Give us what we want. It's so simple.
Yeah, of course, the implications of an Injustice storyline would be incredible to see play out on the big screen. It's incredible to watch, even if you're just playing the game, because it's such a neat concept. So if anything, of course, we've already talked about it. That would be incredible for that to come out of this. But it definitely is. If it didn't steal the show altogether, because like you said, it's a very long film, but it is one of the best scenes, maybe the best scene, or at least number 2, in my opinion, with the final fight being up there as well, and some of the other pieces. But yeah, Eric, I mean, we and then of course the very end, talking about Martian Manhunter. You know, Bruce wakes up from the nightmare scene and then goes outside. Martian Manhunter's just at his back door, I guess, talking about how proud his parents would be of him. And then he's like, "Oh, by the way, they call me Martian Manhunter." All right, like
he does this weird.
He could have just been like, "By the way, they call me Mike."
He does this weird 360 like spin too. Like, he turns around to fly away, but then he continues to turn and then leaves. Did no one else notice that? Please let me know.
I turn around here.
It's so weird. Again,
it's gonna come back around. Like,
so it was interesting, but man, we definitely went a little overboard here, but it was a great discussion. Phil, anything else about the Justice League that we might have missed, or anything else that you want to jump into? No, not Kite Man. Anything other than Kite Man that we want to tackle here before we wrap up?
No, not too much else, man. Again, to kind of go back about what I said as far as my final thoughts, I'm just happy that this got done. And I'm even happier that it's good, because I think it would have been tough to come on here and shit on this for an hour and a half. I would have felt really bad.
It would have had to be at least an hour and a half too. It's a 4-hour movie. And if we had stuff to shit on, and we did kind of shit on it a little bit because we had a lot of nitpicky stuff. But when you watch it from start to finish, do I think I'm ever going to watch this movie again? No. But I also don't plan on watching the original Avengers movie again either. And it's not because it wasn't good. I just experienced it already.
Yeah.
And this was a fantastic movie. It was really, really good. It's all I can think about since I watched it. And I'm excited to have future conversations and discussions about it. This is exactly what it should have done because the Justice League was formed a little bit way too early. They're definitely going with Zack Snyder's vision, and I didn't really agree with that up until now. Like, Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, that leads up into the 3 Justice Leagues. I didn't really think that was going to work. Dude, I am down for it. If he comes back, I would love to see it. But with that being said, that's pretty much the end of our review here, guys. We really want to thank you guys so much for joining us for this amount of time, whether you're listening to us live, watching us live, or you're coming back. We're hoping to do a lot more stuff on YouTube. We were thinking about doing maybe another review here soon, but we're going to be looking into that. If there's any content you want us to try to tackle on the YouTube page, definitely let us know. But if you go to the link in any of our bios in our social media, you can also find our podcast. And we have several reviews we've already done this month and that we got moving forward as well. So Phil, any final thoughts before we head on out of here?
No, again, just as Eric mentioned, thanks so much for all of the interaction, all of the questions. We really appreciate it. And we want to do more things where we're able to interact with our listener base. And, as Eric mentioned, we have done a lot of movie reviews here in the past or in the last few weeks. So if you want to check those out, you can find it anywhere you're listening to your podcast, which of course includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Amazon Music, and wherever else you're finding your favorite shows. If you have been listening on Apple Podcasts, please hit that little purple icon and leave us a 5-star review. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Wait For It Podcast and on Twitter at Wait For It Pod. And of course, if you are watching on our YouTube channel, please make sure you subscribe. That way we can create a custom link because right now we're like youtube.com/E4927.
Yeah, it's not good. But like I said, I think eventually we will transition. We're just throwing some extra reviews. This is really for extra content outside of our podcast. Eventually, we're hoping to do a lot more with it. Godzilla versus Kong is coming out, and I realized, Phil, that it does come out on the 31st, I believe, for the US. So it might end up on the podcast. We thought it might end up on the YouTube page. So we'll see for sure.
That's my new groan. It was the Snyder Cut. Now it's Godzilla versus Kong.
We'll see what happens. There's also Mortal Kombat coming out next month. And then, of course, Falcon and the Winter Soldier is ongoing. Loki's coming up, Black Widow. So there's a lot of great content out there just in the superhero genre, but there's so many other things that we can definitely try to tackle. But again, we appreciate the support, guys. Thank you guys so much for all the great questions and for sticking around. My name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. And please don't forget, on our podcast, we release new episodes every Monday and Wednesday. And all you have to do is wait for it.
Mr. Eric Almighty and Phil the Filipino? Yeah, they've got you covered. And all you got to do is wait for it. This is the Wait For It podcast.